Hello, my name is Paul Brooks, and I moderated this panel discussion you're about to watch titled Business Unusual: Do Music Festivals and Nightclubs Have a Future? I spoke with these panelists on May 23rd, 2020, and we talked about how the current COVID-19 pandemic is disrupting live music. And while this is a really important conversation to be having, it pales in comparison to the current and ongoing conversations around white supremacy, racist policing, and the subjugation of Black people, Indigenous people, and people of color. Electronic music is Black music, and Black Lives Matter.
Hello, my name is Paul Brooks, and I'm moderating this panel discussion today titled Business Unusual: Do Music Festivals and Nightclubs Have a Future? Before we get started, I want to take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional territory of the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, where I'm talking to you from today, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, the Piikani, and the Kainai First Nations, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and the Stoney Nakoda First Nation. The city of Calgary is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. We're going to be talking about some sensitive topics today, and we're going to be talking about some loss of artistic projects. But I want to acknowledge that that does not compare to the loss of human life and the loss of loved ones through this current pandemic. And I want to acknowledge our frontline healthcare workers and the people who are deemed essential workers and the folks who are working hard to put food on our tables right now. Those are the folks who are giving us the privilege and the opportunity to have this discussion. So we've all seen a year of music events seemingly evaporate overnight. And while some organizations and businesses are able to pivot and try and offer some of those things online, let's face it, music festivals and nightclubs are in the business of mass gatherings. And people who love music, those working in the industry, artists, they're wondering, when is this going to be over and what's the landscape going to look like in the future? But really nobody knows, not even the experts. So joining me to talk about the uncertainty facing music festivals and nightclubs currently, we have an incredible panel of electronic music entrepreneurs. And I was really excited when Alberta Electronic Music reached out to me to moderate this panel. I've had the opportunity to work with everybody on this panel in one way or another. And so I want to introduce to you Arlen Cormack, who's the Senior Vice President of Touring and Production with PK Sound, a Calgary-based speaker manufacturer and production company. Liz Thomson is the co-founder and art director of Bass Coast Festival, and she also heads the Guild Art Collective, which produces art installations for festivals around North America. Pete Emes is the owner of Hifi Club and one half of the DJ duo Smalltown DJs. And Christine Hunter is a festival production expert and a founding member of the British Columbia Music Festival Collective. It's a new industry group representing independent festivals in BC. Liz, I want to start with you. So in April, Bass Coast Festival announced its postponement. And I want you to tell me about the day that you had to make that decision and what it was like breaking that news to your team.
I mean, we knew that the festival was probably going to be postponed, but the final word coming down from Bonnie Henry, put plans that we've been putting into place into motion. It's devastating, really devastating. We have over 60 managers on our team. And when we started making the phone calls to break the news to those people that the event wasn't going to be happening in July, they cried. and so did we. It was really, really, it was a devastating decision to have to make.
Arlen, we're talking right now at the end of May 2020, and there's an event coming up this weekend that you would be very involved with, a really well-known festival called Lightning in a Bottle. Tell me about where you'd rather be right now.
Well, at this very moment, I would have recently landed in California, putting the final touches on the Lightning stage as a stage manager there, getting crews ready to load in bands, turn over acts all weekend. Definitely feeling that one right now for sure.
Pete, you are navigating some difficult territory right now because you have a restaurant that you're trying to reopen. You have a nightclub that's currently closed, and you also had a summer of gigs dry up. What's this been like for you?
Oh, it's been great. No, we picked all the wrong businesses to be in, but that's where we are. So it's been a challenge across the board. We've had to address each different venture that we have separately. So with home and away, we're providing takeout and delivery service right now. There's been a great support in the community for that, which is really cool to see. I mean, it's not the same as being open at full capacity, but it's something. And and then when it comes to Smalltown DJs, we've had to pivot, and we're working on some projects for online for streaming stuff. I've been doing a Dad Rock radio show on my personal socials, which I'm having a lot of fun with. And then Mike and I have a couple streams planned in the next little bit here that are gonna be pretty cool. We're doing some interesting broadcast locations coming up. So it's been a huge change for us. But then when it comes to the club, that's kind of the biggest question mark, because at Hifi, I mean, we have no idea when we're going to reopen. We have no idea what that's going to look like. It's definitely something that's far off in the future as far as we're concerned right now. And we're just doing our best to figure out how the next few months are going to look. And, we're planning, we luckily at Hifi, we have a bunch of art shows that we've had over the years. So we're actually planning an art sale, or by the time this broadcast, it'll already be in progress. But we're trying to do our best to stay afloat and to navigate this. And the reality is we don't know whether we'll be able to or not.
Christine, I want to go to you now. You've lent your expertise to so many different events, but I want to talk about your role as director of talent for Shambhala Music Festival. When everything came to a screeching halt in March 2020, can you tell me where you were at with your production cycles and how far along the road you were in preparing for this year's event?
Yeah, for sure. So end of Feb, we had pushed our lineup release out. So I run the entertainment department and work with 6 stage directors who curate the lineup. And we had been working on that for, 6 months. We pushed the lineup ahead because we moved our dates this year. We had just released the lineup. So we were just starting to promote the lineup for the spring. And once it came to a halt, it was great that we got the lineup out when we did, but no one could have predicted it, obviously. And now, I mean, we're holding tight. I mean, there's not much we can do for now. Everyone is still on board and still working. But for Shambhala, we were fortunate to get our lineup out, but unfortunate, I mean, as everybody else, that everybody had to postpone this year. Yeah.
Christine, you've had a really interesting response to what's going on right now. I know that you're spearheading this British Columbia Music Festival Collective. Can you tell me about where that idea came from and what you're trying to accomplish with this group of festivals?
So when March hit, I was trying to reach out to certain festivals that we already were similar alike. So people that have similar production, same size. We all have the front of house, the back of house. And Julie Fowler with Artswells in Northern BC had just started kind of a sign up for festivals in BC. And when I came on board, when she reached out to me, it was around the middle of March. We had 8 festivals on. And then her and I caught up in the coming weeks just about a dream that I've had of creating an alliance of festivals that are all like-minded to create best practices that we can use, pre-pandemic. And now we have 66 festivals on board, nonprofits and profits from all over BC, from all different sizes, from arts to folk to jazz to electronic with Bass Coast and Chamblaz on there. And right now, where we're sitting now, a month and a half later, we've been the province reached out to us to draft essentially like an operations guide to how to operate within the new restrictions with 50 people and what that's going to look like. So it's a daunting task, and we're not the only ones that are being asked across Canada. So through the BC MFC, we were invited to the CLMA, which is the Canadian Live Music Association. So we meet twice a week on the Wednesday calls. It's festivals wide across the country. And every province has a certain group of collective alliances of festivals from all different ranges that are now working to build a guide to present to their province. And that's kind of where we're thick into it right now with our collective. And it couldn't be more like it's unfortunate this is what brought us all together, but it was in due time that this had to happen, more communication with our industry in BC and across the country. So, serendipitous for sure.
Liz, can you talk about the relationships between festivals in the Pacific Northwest? There's a circuit and there's a relationship between festivals. A lot of them share staff, talent. Can you just talk about that ecosystem?
Sure. That's a really good way to describe it, is that underneath the festival that you're going to, there's a massive ecosystem of companies that are involved. That's everything from lighting, labor, security, food, vendors. And a lot of those industry professionals work multiple events. And like Christine said, when the first meeting happened of this festival collective, the sparks were flying. There's so many like-minded festivals. And the really interesting thing is that it's all different styles of music, all different styles of festival production, but all the same kind of people, both attending and producing. So, it's, when you look at the number of festivals in the Pacific Northwest, it's multiplying exponentially every year. Maybe not this year, but it's a huge economic driver in our province. And the festival collective is this amazing bonding experience that every single person that's involved felt so rejuvenated by. Those conversations they're amazing. It's a really interesting project.
Arlen, you have worked festivals all over, I want to say the world, but I know in North America. I'm just wondering, what do you think festivals can learn from one another during this time, or what can they learn from sharing information with one another?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think what Liz and Christine are involved in is obviously a really great step to keeping communication open. Really, it can be from, are we going to be creating best practices that everybody can share across the board? Are there different ways to think about maybe emergency plans or how to space people? Again, I think it's just the communication, and I think a lot of these learnings are going to transmit down to everybody, pretty quickly.
Christine, what do you think? What do you think can be gained from festivals communicating and sharing information with one another?
That's an interesting question, because where we're at right now, currently, like this week, is like I mentioned, we're all gathering the info that we think should be the guidelines. And then the government is essentially going to take that and work with public health authorities and work with the Ministry of Tourism to build their own guides, as far as what I understand. I think for us to all collaborate right now, it's a powerful movement. Numbers and power in numbers is going to help us out in this. And because everyone that's involved, I mean, mostly for all the festivals, it's the EDs and the ADs. Whereas I'm not one of those, but I've just been involved in so many productions that I kind of get all aspects. And I think just the skill set and the experience and the knowledge that everyone has in all these festivals, we can all bring it together and kind of conceptualize what it's going to look like. But I mean, no one really knows what it's going to look like. I mean, it's so hard. It's all hearsay right now, which is the hardest part. But I mean, we all can create an operation plan, but it's going to come down to really what the government wants us to do to proceed, if that makes sense.
Pete, I mean, everybody on this call is dealing with multiple levels of governments and restrictions and hoops that they have to jump through. What is the role with government right now of all levels, federal, provincial, municipal, in supporting these cultural events and institutions?
Well, the way it's fun. That's a really good question. We've had positive and negative interactions with all the levels of government. From our perspective, the federal support has been pretty decent, and the reaction has been pretty decent from our perspective so far. We had to, when the shutdown first happened, we had to lay off, like, I think it was, close to 100 people, and we hired some of them back, and with the help of the federal government wage subsidy, we're able to keep these staff members on, and then for some of them, they've gone on to the CERB program, which is they're end up, some of them making more than they were when they were working for us, which is, I mean you can't for the workers, I mean, that's definitely a level of support, that they're getting for a part-time worker or whatever. And so that's seems to be, we don't know how that's going to look 3 months from now and 6 months from now, but the federal government has seemingly stepped up from the standpoint of ourselves and our for the businesses and the workers. And then on the provincial level, we've seen, and from our perspective, it's been a bit of a fumbling in Alberta. I mean, Kenny announced, he announced a date of reopening that seemed kind of arbitrary at the time, and then ended up being too early, and he had to basically call it off with 12 hours notice prior to the reopening. So all these people had spent a bunch of money to reopen. The announcement was made 2 weeks before the scheduled reopening, and that's how long you need at the minimum to get open. So everybody's scrambling, and then a few hours before they're supposed to do it, they get the notice that in Calgary, at least, that they weren't allowed to reopen and they weren't going to be reopening. So to me, it was it was red tape. It was basically government interference in a process for no reason that ended up losing a bunch of money for all these businesses. So to me, that's not how an efficient and helpful government looks like. So and then on the municipal level, from our standpoint, we've had some it's seemingly some good assistance. I mean, I'm in contact with Councillor Woolley, and we're talking about ideas for some of the bars and restaurants to try to operate, whether it's the pop-up patios for places that didn't have patios before, ways to get people down to these businesses to be able to support despite the gathering restrictions. So I mean, there's different reactions at the different levels, and it's gonna continue. I'm sure there'll be there'll be some good decisions and bad decisions made here in the next 6 months to a year as well. So we'll see how that goes. But we're remaining hopeful, and we're going to do our best to try to reopen responsibly. And we're really conscious about not just about reopening when they tell us we can, but reopening when it's safe for people that are going to be coming out, because from our standpoint, a lot of people are taking this seriously or less serious, more seriously or less seriously. But from our standpoint, we always feel like we have the safety of our patrons at heart, and we always have, whether it's harm reduction or whatever else. And it's like we just want to make sure that we're not putting the businesses ahead of the health of the patrons.
Arlen, what have you been doing to interact with or lobby with various levels of government? What's PK Sound been trying to do?
Most of us have been, myself, I started last week writing letters to MPs, 4 different MPs at the federal level. I honestly think that's where the most support will come from in the long term, trying to plant the seeds for maybe a longer term grant program of some type, specifically designed for concerts and entertainment. And I know sports has some, stuff underway, but I don't think there's really anything specific to entertainment. And as things come on board last, likely for us, I think that's an angle we really need to push. As Pete said, I don't think provincially is going to be quite the same type of support. We're going to reach out there as well. So that's kind of the push on the federal level. And then just in general, I've been trying to keep in touch with peers and colleagues and trying to brainstorm ideas and see where they're at. And maybe there's ways we can collaborate and support each other that, doesn't cost money. And also trying to keep up on the personal check-ins and doing what we can to sort of help keep the culture alive as well. It's not just about the money. It's definitely the people and the culture is what's going to, be the through line for us to the other side of this. But really right now, we know the next few months are going to be pretty tough and pretty terrible. And there's no real end in sight for gatherings over 50 people. So that's why we're trying to extend the conversation. And, I know the governments don't have the answers themselves, but I want to plant the seed for people to be proactive, not for August and September, but what's happening in 2021. There is some artist appetite and some audience appetites come back, but the government are the gatekeepers. And we need to turn their wheels as much as possible now so that when things do make sense, we're not trying to figure it out then.
Just to my panelists, does anybody want to jump in on that? Everybody's being really polite, and I appreciate that. Anything to add?
Well, I think that's one thing about uniting the festivals is that when we have a united voice, it's a lot easier to approach government. And that's been really helpful because sometimes when you're looking at it from an individual point of view or everyone's experiencing it, we get these you can spiral downhill. There can be a negative spiral. And that's why it's really important to reach out to peers, colleagues, friends, each other, because when you do reach out and you understand that we're all experiencing this loss and this uncertainty, and it really helps to share your stories with other people, and it really helps to listen to other people's stories.
I think also now is giving us the time. We're kind of collaborating and meeting with all these other festivals across BC, across Canada, but for our own festivals who we all work for, Liz and myself, and it's time to get creative, and it's time to really sit back and kind of reassess. And we never have the time. Working for festivals, everybody knows. Not everyone knows, but it's a full-time gig around the clock all year round. There's no downtime. And usually you might get a little bit of a window in the fall, and then it's on to your next production. So now it's given us the opportunity to kind of work within our teams and, whether it's new revenue or it's jumping into the digital world, I feel like it's a great time to really get creative which is
yeah. I couldn't agree more with that. Like, to me, the from an artist standpoint, from a business standpoint, I mean, this is an opportunity, seemingly to regroup and to be, you know, from our standpoint, we've been thinking so outside the box on a daily basis and experimenting with things, whether it's streaming or you know, production ideas or video ideas, and you know, or business ideas that we may not have tried before. And all these things, you know, a lot of them may not work, but it's, you know, you have the time right now to try some of them out, or to investigate some of them, which you never do. It's always like, as an entrepreneur, you guys know, it's like go at all times. And this is like the first time in my career that I've ever been able to think and experiment this long on so many different creative ideas. And that feels, that aspect of it to me is a good one, and it feels positive.
Anybody else want to kind of comment on maybe some silver linings to the current situation? We've heard about the opportunity to experiment and create, or reach out and connect with peers and friends and loved ones. Is anybody else finding any silver linings through this experience?
I mean, I think there's launching pads all over this experience, you know, and it's fun to creatively think about what opportunities are opening, what doors are opening. When one door closes, another two open, but you have to look for it and you have to be willing to take risks in order to explore those possibilities. One that I'm quite excited about is just the attention on local talent. Like, I'm a huge fan of Dad Rock Radio. I tune in every week, and
great plug.
Well, it's great. The chat room's awesome, and the chat rooms and some of the Twitch online streaming, like it's fun, and it's such a focus on our local talent pool. And I think moving forward, as we look at, you know, the small reopenings that are going to happen, it's going to rely on local talent. And we are so lucky that the Pacific Northwest is just loaded full of world-class talent. And we really don't have to reach too far outside of it in this meantime while we're in a holding tank. So the focus on local music and art is really exciting for me.
I think on my end, it's about the connecting with our peers more than we would before this. So, you know, I might talk to Liz once a year. I'll see Arlen once a year. I'll see Pete once a year at Shambhala. But I mean, with all these, you know, new collectives, we're talking a lot more, which I think is going to kind of give a boost to the visionaries of our industry. And I think moving forward, there's going to be a lot of cool new projects coming out of this time because everybody's talking and collaborating, and we have that time right now. Well, for the unforeseeable future. Yeah.
So we've seen a lot of you know, DJs, artists pivoting to offer live streams and you know, share their music online. I want to hear from each of you on this. Do you think that is going to satiate people and they're not going to have the drive to attend live music events in the future? Is that taking something away from the future of live music, or is it is it a stopgap? What do you think? Pete or Arlen?
Oh, sorry, go.
Arlen, go for it.
Sounds good. I think it is an opportunity to augment. You know, there are companies that have already been doing it, you know, live broadcasting their events for the past few years. Doing things like LIB, where they're lightning in a bottle, where they're creating the virtual environment for people to navigate this weekend and can go stage to stage. That is, you know, pretty neat. And I think that will just play into the larger, you know, rebound or come back. So I think it's going to open the door for accessibility in a more interesting way. But the short answer is no way. People want to be in front of the speakers. They want to be close to their friends. They want to feel the lights and the lasers, you know, across their face and in the air. The live music experience, I don't think will go anywhere. The moment that we're allowed to come back, I think people are going to get at it pretty quickly, for sure.
I think there'll be an opportunity for more curated events. I mean, here in BC, I'm not sure if it's the same in Alberta, we can do events at 50 capacity. So starting to think about like the intimate and interactive concept. And, you know, I mean, the drive-ins are happening around, I think, North America, if not around the world, but more of a curated event working within the 50-person capacity, I think is gonna, I think that's gonna thrive soon. Like, I honestly think in the next couple of months, once, you know, we get through this May, through the June, and they get the consumer confidence back, I think is when our opportunity is gonna be kind of given to us to curate, you know, really intimate and interactive events with these people.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree, and the other thing with regards to the streaming, you know, it's been something that's been going on for years at a lower capacity, whether it's Boiler Room or big festivals streaming from the festival itself, and you know, it's a way for fans to engage further with what they love, and I think that, you know, now it's like there's 1,000 boiler rooms happening every day, and you know, so there's a lot more selection out there, but at the end of the day, it's an enhancer for what you know, someone who enjoys going to see live music and going out to festivals and clubs, you know, it just kind of allows them to engage even more with that. So I agree with Arlen, and I think that you know, I think that it could even be more of a boom when things are back, because, you know, all this pent up energy, and people are going to want to get out and move their bodies and interact with other people. And who knows, you know, we may end up seeing twice as many festivals pop up after this. You know, it seems far-fetched considering the boom of the last couple of years, but that could be a possible outcome, you know?
Liz, how about you? Is live music coming back?
Oh yeah, absolutely, without even a hesitation. There's nothing that replaces the shared experience of a crowd on a dance floor. I hope that the virtual streaming world also continues, because I really appreciate, like yesterday I was doing some work and I needed some music, and I turned on Twitch and Max Eulis was playing a 2-hour set in the afternoon, and I just sat there and got my work done, and wow, it was like, just my work is definitely better when I'm listening to new music I've never heard before. So that curated at-home experience is awesome, and I hope it doesn't go away. But oh yeah, as soon as the dance floors turn back on, there's so much that goes on those dance floors, emotionally, psychologically. Nothing's ever going to replace it. No.
We have about 20 minutes left in our conversation, and I'm going to steer us back into some darker territory again. What is at risk of being lost if some of our festivals and clubs can't bounce back from this current situation? What is the live music and connection like? Why is that important? Somebody jump in.
I'll quickly, just on my end, I just know in BC here that, I mean, our, you know, we call them Farley at Shambhala, they're so dedicated that, I mean, we've been running on our own for 23 years that I don't see it not coming back. I see the loyalty of the ticket buyers so strong that that's hard. Maybe it's just hard for me to imagine, but I don't really see it happening to us here with Shambhala, because they've come for so many years and we've been around for so long that, you know, I think they're so invested that I don't think unless we physically can't do it, sure. But I feel like there's it might take, you know, a year or two to come back to, you know, our regular programming, but I don't see an extreme loss on my end, but maybe that's my optimism.
Well, the other great thing about Shambhala is that you guys don't have to pay rent too.
True. We own the land. Yeah.
which is the ideal setup for a festival. I mean, I think Shambhala will definitely be like a guiding light through all this, because they're gonna come back stronger than ever in 2020. whatever year everybody comes back.
Whatever
But
year it is.
Pete, you recently penned like an open letter, a love letter to DJing. It was very touching. Tell me about what you think is at risk of being lost here if we don't act.
Well, yeah, I don't think it's a matter of not acting. I don't think we can act on it right now. But I think that to me it's like, if we're being honest, and nobody knows the timeline. I'm not going to claim to know the timeline. If things are able to get back to a semblance of normal in 6 months, it's going to make a huge difference on how many venues survive versus a year from now. And I mean, the fact of the matter is that the government's providing loans for these businesses, but a lot of them already have debt and they don't want to take on more debt. And, depending on what size the venue is, they may have a chance of opening sooner versus later. So, if you have a over 500 person venue, the timeline looks even longer for reopening. So there may end up being some consolidation by like larger companies, like Live Nation may come in and swoop up a bunch of places. Who knows how all that's going to look, but the fact is that, there's definitely going to be less venues when we reopen, and some of these places that have been hubs for our scene are not going to exist when things come back. And I mean, that's, a reality that people in the scene are may or may not be thinking about. But if they, and it's not just about the venues or the festivals or it's about the artists as well. And I think right now it's like, people are hunkering down or whatever, and watching Twitch and doing what they can to stay sane. But I think that if people can, they really need to try and support these independent businesses or independent artists through these times, because Canada is one thing, but in the US a lot of these people may not have the support from the government, so they may end up having to take jobs and not be creating music or whatever else. And it's like, the longer this goes, the more that some of these creative outlets are going to be extinguished. So I think as a fan of electronic music, of music in general, you need to actively support at this juncture if you can. And it's like, go out and seek out your favorite artists, buy their music on whatever platform, go buy some merch, go support your festivals, go on the Base Coast site and like buy your ticket for 2021. And, because it's like, if you don't do that kind of thing right now, we're not going to be able to have all these things that we love to do when we reopen. I mean, because, a quarter or half or 2/3 of them may not be here anymore,
Yeah, I fully agree with Pete as far as, the longer this goes on, the less, cultural venues, cultural touch points we'll have. And that also goes on more of the industry side as well. There will be less promoters, there'll be consolidation, there'll be less technical production houses. And the point I want to touch on as well is the people. Like, the longer this drags out, the more people are going to find other resources, work streams, and they might not come back. Like, who knows if we'll be able to staff event X of certain size once all these people have found different career paths potentially as things go on. So, the people, the labor, the amount of companies around, it will be, again, the longer it drags out, the more different the landscape will look for sure.
Liz?
Yeah, I lose sleep over it for sure. It's when you're looking at, our industry was the first to close, last to reopen. You're not just looking at a couple of months of lost revenue. You're looking at an entire income year with no revenue. You're looking at, possibly more. And how many small independents can survive that? The support from the government is support, and it's really valuable, but it's not going to fill those huge gaps. And that's all of the suppliers, like who brings the toilets, who brings the power, who is the food supplier, like all that ecosystem we're talking about is all small independent companies. And it's a really, really dangerous position that we're in right now. All those companies need support, and they need to reopen, they need to reinvent their income strategies. And when we do reopen, with the guidelines that are going to be in place, they're all going to cost money. All changes cost money, and everybody has a math equation that they're going to need to figure out, and we need to be there for each other. We need to understand the loss that all of those suppliers in the ecosystem are experiencing, and we need to figure out ways to support each other.
Christine, the BEC, the British Columbia Music Festival collective, represents all genres of music. And I mean, we're talking about electronic music right now, but are these challenges we're talking about experienced across the board?
Yeah, I mean, all of the festivals in BC have been postponed or canceled this year. So everyone's going through similar challenges right now. A lot of nonprofits are on this collective. So a lot of the conversations are around funding right now, and working with Music BC and Creative Music BC, they're trying to figure out, and the APA, what was it, APA? There's a few other BC Touring Council, really trying to find out where we can get funding to keep these businesses going so they don't completely shut down. Because a lot of the festivals on the collective, I mean, there's 66. There's probably about, my guess, like half of them, are under 2,000 people capacities. So their teams are very small, and usually they're just the AD or the director or the ED running these festivals. So, I mean, that's their livelihood. So right now the conversations this week specifically are about funding and where we can grab funding, and watching all the announcements that come out from Trudeau, and just really trying to stay on top of that and then share that resource with the group.
Well, we're going to have to wrap up this conversation pretty quick, but I really appreciate all of you sharing and communicating about this really challenging situation that we're all experiencing. I want to end on as positive a note as possible, and I want to hear from each of you what you think the music fans out there, the people who love electronic music, the people who love festivals, the people who love nightclubs and nightlife, what can they do to support this ecosystem that we're talking about and help ensure that it has a healthy future? I'll start with Arlen.
I think the group has brought up a couple interesting points already, but I do think that, in whatever way you can support your artists, and also the festivals and even the venues, I don't want to just pitch to everybody, spend their cash. We obviously want people to, again, buy the merch, go to the band camps, any GoFundMes that are out there for festivals, definitely hit those up. But again, I can't stress the cultural point enough. Like, we need to just stay involved, and this will come back. So, don't turn your head, don't put your head in the sand, stay in those chat rooms, talk to your friends, be the mental health check, keep dancing your butts off, like, just because you can't do it with your friends doesn't mean you can't be out there enjoying the tunes.
Liz.
I think it's important for everybody to stay educated. If you're forming opinions about the state of things that are going on, make sure that they're based on truths, and read up, find out what companies are going through, learn about how festivals work, learn about how nightclubs and events work, and how DJs make a living. And you'll find the more the education you have about the real experiences people are going through, the more connected you're going to be, and that connection is going to be what carries us through.
Pete.
I mean, those are really good points that those guys just made. I would say another thing you could do is reach out to your local politicians, you know, whether it's on a municipal level or provincial or federal. Reach out and let them know what you value, because that's the way that you're going to get them to address the things you care about. So it's, you know, if you see the need for support to festivals or to, you know, in our community, I mean, there's definitely the need for it, but, you know, it's like reaching out and letting the politicians know what, you know, where your values lie. I mean, that's the only way that they're going to be thinking about it at all. And one of the things that's happened in our industry, in the hospitality business, is that there's not as much of an organized lobby when it comes to you know, the federal government. So they, you know, they've fallen behind when it comes to other industries where, you know, they're used to lobbying and used to getting the ear of the politicians. So you know, people can make a difference in that regard, and, you know, reach out and let people let your politicians know that we need support, just like any other industry, and probably more so. So and the other thing, one thing I wanted to bring up before we go is also, I just want to say how much I appreciate the people on this panel, because Arlen, you know, not just PK, Base Coast, Shambhala, and AMCOM, but, you know, you guys, Arlen and Liz and Christine and Paul, you know, I love working with you guys. I'm super bummed I won't get to see you this summer at the festivals, and you know, it's great for me just to connect with you guys on this level, because you know, I'm finding the more that I'm doing these kind of calls and these personal get-togethers, you know, the more I'm feeling that it's a really rewarding thing. So I appreciate you guys.
Thanks, Pete.
Very well said.
Christine, I'm going to give the last word to you. You know, and your BC Music Festival Collective. What are the voices around the table saying that we should be speaking to our communities about, and how can our communities that rally around these festivals support them in this time?
To be honest, we haven't gotten there yet. There's kind of like two portions of what we're doing. There's the crisis management of, you know, we're in the pandemic, we're not post yet, and we want to go into the best practices. I think for me, and I think this goes for everyone on this panel, I mean, don't forget that moment of awe, which we create for everyone. Don't forget when the hair goes up off your arm and you get that feeling all over for everyone involved in events. I mean, that's why I do it. I love that moment when you're standing in the middle of the field and everyone's doing the Shambhala howl across the site, and that moment that we curated as an entire ecosystem, as Liz would say. And I think I'd like to leave it with that. It's just don't forget the moments that we've created all together in our festivals and our, you know, our areas.
Happy Shambhala. Okay, thank you all very much. This has been a great conversation, and yeah, I appreciate and respect you all so much, and I hope you're taking care. And it's been a real mental health boost for me to be able to communicate with all of you and talk about this and talk about our shared experiences. So thank you, and let's stay in touch. And also thank you to the Virtual Electronic Music Summit for helping facilitate this. Isis Graham, Andrew Williams, and the whole team that is working to put this on, and all the other panelists and contributors. Thank you.
Woohoo! Woohoo!
Thank you.
Thank you.